Alright, Longlegs is a movie which I've been getting rave reviews from critics all over the world, but it is really that good. I mean, the movie is really hyped up, but is the hype really justified? My simple answer is no, but that doesn't take away the fact that this movie is a very solid horror crime thriller movie. So yeah, basically it is a horror crime thriller movie which works on different levels, and the two standout things of this movie are number one, the cinematography of this movie, and number two, the acting performances from especially these three characters. The acting by Micah Monroe, Alicia Witt, and especially Nicolas Cage is just standout and just the highlight of this movie, along with, as I said, the cinematography of this movie. And it actually brings in the direction of this movie as well. But first, let me tell you the basic story of this movie. The story of this movie includes an FBI agent who is tasked to catching a criminal who has been committing murders, but in a separate, distinct pattern. And by pattern, I would really like to refer to you to the movie Zodiac. If you have already seen the movie Zodiac by David Fincher, that one of the highlights of that movie was the use of ciphers, the use of cipher notes, which are essentially coded messages, and that exact thing of that cipher is again used in this movie, which I think was used really well. And the main thing that this movie which I really liked about was the build up to the suspense. The suspense is given time to breathe, the suspense is given its own space, its own time to grow on you, despite the movie's length is only 1 hour and 40 minutes. I really liked how the main character, the FBI agent, was actually, joining up the clues, tracking up all the clues and just getting one step closer to catching the criminal. I mean, I enjoyed that. I really enjoyed that journey, and that journey is absolutely the essence of this movie, because it is a horror movie, but it is also a crime thriller in which the FBI agent's main mission is to catch that killer, and that process of catching the killer, or that process of uncovering the truth about the killer, that had to be the most engaging thing of this movie. And yeah, that actually works, because that was the most engaging thing of this movie for me at least. But as I mentioned the performances at the start of this video, I would really like to talk about the performances, because all three of these actors did a phenomenal job, especially Nicolas Cage. The movie's name is Longlegs, and Nicolas Cage actually plays the titular character in this movie, and he doesn't have a lot of screen time, but whenever he comes onto the screen, you can't take your eyes off him. You just can't take your eyes off him. And I have to say, with all the makeup and everything on Nicolas Cage, he looked less like Nicolas Cage and more like Heath Ledger. But Micah Monroe also did a very fine job playing the FBI agent, because her character really felt distinct, like she was going through a trauma, kind of a trauma, or she was, I mean, you look at a character and you really recognize that that character is a little bit off, or that character is a bit different, and that entire theme of being different was really justified nicely through the acting of Micah Monroe. Nice job. But if I talk about the horror element of this movie, there is literally no horror in this movie. I mean, I'm that kind of a guy who doesn't really get scared by horror movies or just scared by jump scares and all those things. I mean, I'm that kind of a guy, but even though you are someone who really gets scared of any horror thing going around, even for you, this movie won't come into that hardcore horror category, because the horror element is there, but it's more about, the catching of the killer. And if I talk about the lore around that horror element, I mean, I had a little bit of trouble understanding that lore, though the entire story of this movie, the entire lore of that exact horror thing is quite straightforward, it's quite simple, but for some reason I may have missed out on a couple of sentences, so therefore it was a bit fuzzy for me. But I don't think you'll have any problem understanding the lore of it, because it's really simple. Overall, I would say this is a good movie, a solid movie, but it's definitely overhyped, because it was just really hyped up and it doesn't really justify the hype of this movie. So I would say, yeah, definitely it's overhyped, but that doesn't mean that the movie is bad. The movie is actually a very solid movie, a solid horror crime thriller movie, which is good in its own way. That's all I want to talk about in this video, and yeah, thank you so much for watching.